Welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Emmett Muckles. Please visit iTunes, Stitcher, or emmettmuckles.com to listen to all the episodes for free.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast with Emmett Muckles. Today is the day that God gave you another chance because you are a billionaire. How did that happen? When you were born. Actually, like 8 months before you were born, you were a billionaire because 2 to the power of 30 equals over a billion cells and you hadn't hit the planet. That message is out the way. Now you know at least a small fraction of your value, so start living in the now. Well, let's get to the now, which is Chris Miles. Money Ripples. Chris Miles, the cash flow expert and anti-financial advisor, is a leading authority teaching entrepreneurs and professionals how to quickly free up cash flow right now, so you can spend time doing what you love the most. You know, this is a very prevalent thing in our society. We're always trying to get back to leisure, which is funny because Americans have more leisure than most people and more money at that. He is the author and podcast host of Chris Miles Money Show, has been featured in U.S. News, CNN Money, EO Fire, and has a high reputation with his company, Money Ripples, at www.moneyripples.com. What's up, Chris?
What's up?
So I'm going to start with the question that I start with everyone. It's very generic, but it's direly important. Was what got you to now?
My life, my entire life. Apparently 8 months before I was born.
Bam!
Right?
See, you got it.
Yeah, but you know what got me here? I tell you, like I was raised traditionally like a lot of people. You know, I mean, I was kind of like lower middle class growing up. I even lived in a trailer park for 5 years. That was exciting, right?
Oh yeah.
You know, my mom was like the starving artist. You know, she actually was trained by the same master painter that trained Bob Ross, who paints the happy little trees and all that kind of stuff. So she was trained by the same master painter that trained him. But again, she was always struggling in her business.
Right.
My dad was the opposite. He was like the employee that thought he would work there for 40 years, and that didn't always work out, right? Because companies would lay you off, but he was loyal. Like he would not quit unless he was forced to. So very diverse perspectives growing up. So I was the first one to go to college and the first one to drop out of college because with one class to go before getting my bachelor's, I dropped out and I said, you know what, I'm going to try being a business owner because my initial goal was to become a business consultant, right?
Right.
I'd majored in sociology with a triple minor in Japanese, ballroom dancing, and psychology.
You weren't
right?
trying to make any money out of college, were you?
That's right. That's why I had to go to business consulting because at least there was money there, right?
Right.
But I thought, well, if I'm going to do business consulting, shouldn't I have real life experience, not just get an MBA and have book smarts, right? So I dropped out and just thinking of taking a 1-year sabbatical. And the first opportunity that came along was becoming a financial advisor. Because unbeknownst to me at the time, I thought you had to really, interview and apply to get in to be a financial advisor. What I found out is they take anybody with a heartbeat. As long as you pass a stupid test, you're good. And but I started doing that because I was like, I want to learn about money. I don't know much about it, but I think it would be cool. So I started doing that, and I ended up liking it. I dropped out of college, did that for 4 years. And then at the end of the 4th year, about the end of 2005, I realized that, I thought, okay, there's some weaknesses here, but my pocketbook's tied to this. I can't, even though I can see there's some shortcomings in what they teach, do I just destroy my whole business? And I called up a friend who I'd actually hired into that business that then quit to do real estate investing. And we started talking about, what's going on in his life. And he said, Chris, my life is amazing. In just the last 4 months, my dad and I partnered up on some deals. My dad's doubled his income as a professor at the local university.
Whoa.
And I was like, come on, that's too good to be true, right?
Right.
And he's like, I'm dead serious. We're doing it. And so we got this debate about what's better, stocks or real estate. I obviously lost, right? Because he asked me, he's like, Chris, how many of your clients are actually financially free where they don't worry about money? I'm not talking about retired. I mean, they're not worried about money. And I said, none. Okay, Chris, good job. How about this? How many of you guys as financial advisors are free, not off of the commissions you're earning, but actually doing the same investment advice you've been giving your clients? How many of those financial advisors are financially free? And I said, well, I guess none of them, because there's even guys who've been doing it for 40 years are still working pretty hard.
Yeah.
He's like, well, there's your problem. And I said, well, give me the answer. He's like, I won't give you the answer. I'm like, dude, give me the answer. Like, you got me to admit that what I'm doing apparently sucks. So give me something. So he finally said, well, listen, if you're really serious, get this book by Kiyosaki called Who Took My Money? It talks about why mutual funds suck, right? And then go listen to this radio show, AM talk radio in those days, right?
Right.
And listen about these two real estate investors. And I did, and I got hooked. And the next thing you know, March of 06, I quit. I'm like, I'm never going back to teach about this kind of crap again because it doesn't work. I can't stay in integrity and do this. I will just go be a mortgage broker, and I'll teach ballroom dancing at the local university. And so
school paid off.
Yeah, no. Yep. I had to use something, right?
Right.
Yeah, you got to use that stuff for something. So I did that, but I had to know what they knew. And so eventually I started to learn what they did. And by later that summer, I got myself financially independent. So I was able to retire when I was 28 years old. And then I was wondering what to do with my life. And I started going more the path because I realized I'm more of a natural teacher. Went down the path of actually helping people get out of the rat race. Went through the recession, got back in the rat race again. I actually went from being financially free to being financially broke and had to pull out of that. I didn't go bankrupt, but it would have been easier if I went bankrupt.
Right.
Starting at zero is better than starting at negative $1.1 million and paying that back. Right. But I made my way back out, was able to become financially independent again at the end of 2016. And here I am basically working kind of part-time in my business, semi-retired, but still fully engaged in my mission to help people become financially independent.
But one of the things that, I keep hearing this, it's all over the place. There's two things. One is live the life you want, make 6 figures, yada, 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 yada. And we all know this about most industrialized countries. They don't have financial literacies. If I gave you $60,000 and you didn't have to work, you would probably blow it. You wouldn't know what to do with it. So that's like one of my biggest things about this culture that's coming around is that people are saying you can make this money, but there's no baseline education behind it. Two is everyone needs a purpose. Even if I have all the money in the world, I would still probably say, maybe I'll go build garages just to keep myself busy. I mean, because you can vacation and travel the world. After a while, that becomes mundane, and you have to have something that gives you purpose. But if you were to go back and start from the beginning, let's say 20, 25 years ago, what would you give yourself? What would you say to yourself?
I would say find different mentors. I'd probably say listen to myself now, right?
Right.
Based on what I learned, because I was all over the spectrum. I tried all kinds of different things, right? But I've learned over time that the most boring things sometimes are the sexiest things. You get the best results from sometimes the most mundane. And I'm not saying like you do the mundane things like, hey, you got $60,000, put it in your 401k. Pay off your debt, that kind of crap that you're always taught, because it's not about that. What you really mentioned is more about the mindset and the purpose and the vision behind it, right?
Right.
It's about becoming a wiser steward of the resources you're given, because we all, I mean, come on, I started from nothing. I was becoming financially independent, and then I lost everything and became financially independent again. So most people don't start from negative $1 million to try to make it to financial independence. So if I can screw up twice, or once at least, and make it, you have hope too. And so I would go back and I would tell him the same thing that I eventually learned, which is, kind of like Tony Robbins says, success leaves clues, right? Like look for those that are successful, not the ones that are posting the pictures with their cars. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff, right? The ones that are taking, renting a private jet, saying they have a private jet, and all that kind of crap that you see on social media nowadays from, people that are, sometimes barely over broke, right? I'm talking about really finding people that say, hey, like, I've got wisdom, I've gained wisdom from what I've done. and find those people. Because if I would have found them 4 years prior, it would have been way better. Again, I don't regret the decisions I made because I still had to go through that to learn some things, but so much easier if I had just listened, to the right people.
With much freedom comes much responsibility. I'm going to start the question with that. Having said that, when you are looking for the mentor, when you're looking for someone, the first place you go is the internet today.
Yeah.
Now, let's go back to my original statement. With much freedom comes much responsibility. There's such a freedom that anybody has a voice. How can you really find that clue that you need that says, that's the person. That person is doing it. That person has the wisdom that I need to take me along this long journey.
Yeah, I'm not going to try to get too woo-woo on you, right? Because I don't want to make it sound too weird. But I'll say this. First, the best way to find people that are legit is become legit yourself, right? Like you got to be someone who's honest with yourself, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Someone who has integrity, has characters, is honest with yourself and others. You do that, like you become the kind of person you want to attract, and it's easier to find those people. I'm always amazed that the charlatans out there, like they never want my time and attention, and I don't care about finding theirs either. It's like we never find each other. It's like our worlds never coincide. We have different friends, we have different connections, right? Relationships. But I'll tell you, they're out there and they're full of crap, So that's one thing that's nice is if you know somebody who has the back seat, the back door to somebody's life. Nobody's life's perfect. Like I'm just as screwed up as anybody else, right? But I'll tell you, it's all of us. Like anybody who's honest with themselves know that we're just a hot mess of imperfection.
Perfect.
They're just trying to make the best what we're doing, right?
Perfect. I was thinking the exact word. Hot mess.
Hot mess, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So I've just learned that the more I work on myself and try to become the better person, I attract better people.
It's easy to say or look at your life and say, I need this. For a lot of people, if they made $200,000, they would figure if I made $200,000 and I could count it right here, that would last me for about 7 years. I could do absolutely nothing for about 7 years, but something led you to 7 figures. What was that?
It's always, again, not to get woo-woo, right? But people always want the strategy, but it really is more of a mindset game, Because, for example, I never started that way. I mean, as a financial advisor, the most I made on an average month was like $1,500, $2,000 a month, maybe,
really?
Right? Like, I didn't make a lot, even those first 4 years as a financial advisor, because I was still in this broke mentality. It wasn't until I met those better guys that were like, hey, you got to focus on abundance. I'm like, well, what's abundance? They're like, here's what abundance thinking is, and they really focused on that. They didn't even talk to me about real estate strategies at first. They were talking all about abundance mindset, even founding fathers and why the Constitution actually teaches people how to be prosperous. I was like, what the heck? Is this a politics lesson or what? But it was awesome, because it sucked me in, and eventually it started to stick a little bit. Like, like things like, trying to create a win-win for people, right? Dollars follow value. That was a concept that didn't make sense to me when I was a financial advisor. Because I believe in a zero-sum game. I believe that in order for me to win, someone else had to lose, right?
Yeah.
And so if I made more money, more commissions, that was bad for them. So if I was a benevolent person, which is what I would do, I would self-sacrifice saying, hey, I'll cut my commissions back as much as I can because I want to serve you. Hey, those mortgages I'm doing for you, I won't charge the standard 1%. I'll charge you 0.5%, right? And then the thing is, like, my wife hates me, because I'm not bringing home much money, but I'm working overtime hours. And the sad thing is that when I'm focused on those costs and trying to be cheap, those people shop me. When I got out of that mindset, I started focusing on value. Like, how do I add more value? How do I serve people, solve problems, give them what they want? When I started to change that focus away from the money and towards the service and the cause versus the effect, which is money, that's when I made more money. So I had to go through phases. I had to go through different stages, right?
Yeah.
So eventually I got to the point where I made $10,000 a month for the first time. And I was like, holy cow, I'm rich. I've never made $10,000 a month. Like if I made 4,000 or 5,000 a month, I thought was amazing, because I only needed $3,500 a month to live. But when I made 10,000 in a month, or I remember June of 06, I remember that was the first month I made 18,000 in a month. I was like, how am I doing this? I'm not even working full time.
You lost your mind, didn't you? You were like, there must be something wrong.
Yeah. Like I remember I was like, wait, isn't that what I about made in a year as a financial advisor, or, just under that? Like it was blowing my mind. And so I started really, so you go through phases, right? Once you start to see yourself, right? I love the book Positive Imaging by Norman Vincent Peale, right? Because he talks about really how you see the world, how you see yourself and everything is what you become, right? And so even when I launched Money Ripples from scratch with a 2-year non-compete, I did that 9 years ago, right? I had to start from zero. And I remember I got to 10,000 a month is about what I was trying to get to. And about a year or so in, I remember I hit 6 figures in the first year. So I was averaging about, 10 grand a month, actually. I think I hit like 120 that first year. So it was about 10 grand a month average. Now there were some months it was like $2,000. Another month it was like $18,000, but it averaged itself out. And then it got to a point where I said, you know what? Now I'm feeling comfortable. Let's make 10,000 my baseline. And so I made it my baseline. So again, in my mind, I would just say 10,000 is the minimum I'm going to make. And it took several months. It takes me usually about 3 to 4 months of saying that before all of a sudden it becomes reality. And so it would become reality. Pretty soon 10,000 was my baseline. And now I was averaging more like 15 to 20,000 a month. And then I thought, what if I made 20,000 a month my baseline? And then pretty soon it was 20,000 a month was my baseline. And then pretty soon I'm like, let's push it to 30, 40, 50. And now my baseline, it's like, I got to make at least 100, to even say it's an okay month. If I do 90,000, I'm like, well, that's kind of a crappy month, like that's not so good. And so it's always just elevating that mindset, right? That of what you expect, right? We always turn the dial up to what we expect. It's the same thing. And you've done it your whole life and you probably didn't even know it, because look at how much money you made as a high schooler compared to what you're making today. Unless you're a high schooler, then you're like, no change. It's the same, right? But if you look at what you were making as a high schooler, you probably say, there's no way I would ever accept that much money or that little of money. Oh, I have to make this much.
Oh, it was a pittance. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. My first job, job, I worked for my mom in an art gallery. I was making $3.15 an hour, There's no, that's like Napoleon Dynamite when he's saying like, that's like $1 an hour. Gosh,
I remember those days and I look back. Here's some of the things that I look at now because I've got a few years on me. And I'm kind of sticker shocked because I said to a friend, I remember 4 of us went out to eat for $20 and we ate really well. And they were like, so? I was like, the other day, 4 of us went out to eat. It was $130. And it was kind of the same level. They're like, and
yeah,
why are you complaining? I was like, I'm not. I'm just making a comparison that over time, these things shift and change, because back then, my perspective on money, I had no clue. I didn't know how it worked. I didn't know. I just thought, I thought my parents made like $100,000-$200,000 and we were like lower middle class, and they were making like maybe $15 an hour.
Yeah, exactly. I remember I thought my dad lied when he told me he made $100 in a day. I was like, no way you make that much money. And now I do the math. I'm thinking, wait, he made $500 a week.
Right.
That guy he would be broke today,
Right.
That's nothing.
So how can listeners, not work so hard for so long? Because that is an ingrained American thing. You do this for this long period of time, and then you get to chill. But usually their purpose is tied to that thing that they did. So then their life kind of cascades after that because they don't have a purpose and they can't have that time. So this is really important for people to get out of this game as rapidly as they can. And I'm going to say this, because we can, because we live in an age where we actually can. There was a time you could not. So what's your advice, sir?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I had a big shift about 2015, right? I went through a divorce, which I never wish that on my worst enemy. It's horrible, right?
Done that.
In fact, it was worse than me going over $1 million in debt. That was easier on me emotionally than going through a divorce, not having my kids around me, all that kind of stuff. Just so you know, I got 6 kids and now I'm remarried. And she's got 2. So we got 8 kids together. It's like the Brady Bunch, but there's no room for Alice, right? So 2015, I was just questioning everything. I was like, should I shut down my business? Because I wasn't emotionally able to really work well. I was maybe working 5 hours a week because I thought I was working, but I really wasn't. I was just stuck. I was just depressed.
Yeah.
And but then I had this epiphany. I realized, wait, my business is still going. Now, just a few months prior to that, I was working 50 or 60 hours a week, right? And pushing and hustling and all that kind of stuff. But then I was like, wait a minute, I'm not making a ton less, but I'm working 1/10 of the hours.
Yeah.
And so I had this shift. One book I'd recommend is called The Pumpkin Plan by Mike Michalowicz. He talks about the prize-winning huge pumpkins you see on the news, right?
Yeah.
He talks about how they grow them and that they buy these perfect prize-winning pumpkin seeds that could be $100,000 for these seeds. They plant them, and then as they grow, they start chopping off the smallest pumpkins until it just feeds into one big pumpkin, right?
Oh. And
that's how they get these massive, humongous, attractions out of these pumpkins. Well, his goal, his advice for like business was do the same thing. Find that Pareto's principle. Find the 20% that makes you 80%, right? And focus on the 20, get rid of the 80. And, chop those things off, right? And so that's what I started doing. But then I went a step further. I said, well, what's the Pareto of the Pareto? What's the top 20% of the top 20%, or really the top 4% that makes 96% of my money?
Right.
And I started focusing on just, again, imaging in my mind, like who was my favorite client. So when I would do my own podcast show or I do interviews like on this, I would talk to them. I wouldn't talk to the ones I hated anymore, right? Because I kept attracting those guys and they weren't fun. I would start talking to the ones I loved. Like my favorite client or 2 that I had, and I would talk to them. And the amazing thing is that my hours didn't increase because I chopped off like 10 hours a week of networking that I was doing because I'm like, I could go virtual. I can do this stuff. I don't have to go network. I don't have to travel all over the country and speak on stages. I can just focus on what I did best, which was really my podcast. Like my podcast was like my best, lead nurturer, lead generator of my business. So I said, cut everything off, say no to speaking engagements, just focus on that. And pretty soon I'm working 5 or 10 hours a week, but my revenue doubled that year from the previous year. And that's where the big epiphany was. That's where I started putting the baseline at $20,000 a month. I'm like, okay, that's my new norm, right? That's my new normal, as people would say nowadays, right? But I started just doing it from there. I was like, well, how can I still stay with less hours? Now I work more hours now. I'm up to about 20 or 30 hours a week. But the only way to get up to that 7 figures after I did it pretty much self-employed, right? I actually did it without having even a VA. Believe it or not, I didn't even have a VA. Got it up to over 7 figures. And now this year I started bringing on more team because I know I can't get to multiple 7 figures without that help. I'd BS long enough. That was huge. One more thing I'll say as advice for that helped me do it is not only was I just looking at the numbers, I was also checking in with my gut, like doing a real intuition check. Because that's one thing I learned. I realized that when I listened, sometimes when you listen to well-meaning mentors or coaches, right? They'll say, you should do your business just like me. But then you might look at their life and say, do I want that life?
Right.
Like that seems pretty stressful. One business mentor, she told me, she said, hey, you did 6 events this year. This is when I was going through a divorce. She's like, you did 6 live events. You need to double that to 12. And I already almost burned out doing 6. I was like, I can't do 12. That's put butts in seats is so hard. And so I started checking in with my intuition. I was like, I'm going to listen to me and what feels right. And my intuition told me, don't do 12, don't do 6, do 3. So instead of doubling it, cut it in half. So I did 3 events instead.
That makes absolute sense because then the value quadruples.
Yeah.
Because if Bruno Mars says, I'm going to do 7 concerts this year, one in North America, one in South America, and I'm just going to hit the continents.
Yeah.
His shows would sell out astronomically.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's the same principle. With this, the whole COVID going through that situation.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't remember 2008. I teach, and I teach some young folks. And I always reference 2008, and they look at me like I am just something's wrong with me. Like, what happened in 2008? And then I realized they were too young to realize what was happening. But if you went through it, you shudder. And I said, something's got to happen because we go up and we reset. That's just the way the world is. The world is like a sine wave. It goes up and it resets.
That's right.
COVID was the reset. This one, and to me, it was almost better than a financial reset. Yeah. Because financial resets is a little crazy psychologically on people, even though some people pass away. But how is your business and how is your mindset changed? Or did you experience a shift during that period? Did you have an epiphany?
Oh, yeah. Well, remember, I went over $1 million in debt. That was a pretty big, slap in the face. Because in 2007, I came out of retirement, right? And I partnered up with some guys. The funny thing is that they said, hey, Chris, first, we want you focused here because we're all financially independent. We don't have to work. This is a mission. We're in this together. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to cut off our income streams. Oh, so number one, that was stupid because we're teaching people how to get out of the rat race, right? That was the focus. Shouldn't we be out of the rat race if we're going to teach that stuff? So I started cutting off streams of income to be the team player, even though I didn't feel right. Again, my gut, I ignored it. Yeah. My intuition said, don't do it, but I ignored it because I was like, hey, I'll listen to you. I'm a team player. Right. Well, I did that. And then our market, the people we're marketing to were real estate investors, but not the good ones, the ones that were gambling with the real estate in 2008, right? Or 2007. So the next thing we know, business starts tanking because those people don't have money. I cut off my income stream, so I don't have money coming in. Other than that, I raised up all these expenses with business expenses, and I bought a new house at the time. So, I had $22,000 a month of expenses. I was only making $5,000 or $6,000 a month.
And you have a lot of kids.
Yeah, and that was even before a lot of those came along. So, it was not pretty. And here's the thing: you can imagine. I'm back in the rat race, and I'm supposed to be teaching people how to get out. Yeah. I was battling not only the financial situation, but my own brain because I feel I'm out of integrity because I can't teach people how to get out of the rat race if I'm in it myself. So I stopped. Eventually by 2008, I said, I'm going to make a pivot here. I'm going to change it because people were saying, Chris, I would love to hire you, but I can't find the money. This recession's kicking my butt. And I remember thinking in the back of my mind, I wouldn't say it verbally to them, right? But I remember when they would tell me their financial situation, and I'm thinking in the back of my mind, well, you've got more money than I've got. I'm way worse off than you are. I bet you we could find money here. And so I tell them, I said, if I can find the money for you, would you hire me? And they said, well, yeah, of course. Because the one thing I was doing was getting resourceful. I was getting scrappy, right? I was trying to figure out how to make it happen. And it wasn't easy. By the way, but at the same time, my now ex-wife, but she was my wife at the time, she was threatening to take the kids and leave and move in with her sister so that I could figure my crap out, that's going on, and I'm on welfare, I'm pretty much having to get welfare, on food stamps or WIC or whatever, trying to, buy food. And I'm supposed to be the guy who has it all figured out. So I started telling people how to get resourceful and finding cash. And the cool thing is that, that was 2008. I still had to develop that and refine, what I'd find and for people over time. And I knew I was on to something by 2009 because I remember I taught a woman how to use a credit card to pay off her car and free up $250 a month. And she's like, that's so wrong. Why should that work? I'm like, well, your car is more expensive than your credit card. If you do this, you'll find more money and you'll be safer. You can always pay the $250 a month on your credit card, but you don't have to. You've got extra cash now. You can have some extra buffer and some safety and breathing room. Yeah. Right. So I started doing all that stuff, and the next thing I know, we got a year and a half later, we get into the right relationships, like chiropractors and dentists specifically, and then pretty soon our company went from almost bankrupt to booming. We had over 250 clients come in that year in 2010. It just pulled us right out of that, all because of the crap I was going through, living in real life. That I was able to apply for my clients. And it was, again, it's staying in integrity. I didn't have to teach something I wasn't doing. I taught what I was doing. And eventually, when I did get out of the rat race in 2016 again, now I started going back to teach people how to get out of the rat race.
So with that, how can people connect with you and help themselves?
Yeah, two easy ways. I mentioned my podcast. There's the Chris Miles Money Show. That's on iTunes, YouTube. There's over 500 episodes. I would just say this. If you're a newbie, try to go back towards the beginning.
Yeah.
If you're more like somebody like, I've got cash sitting around, how do I create passive income? Start from the end and from the most recent and go back. So that's a little tip there, since there's so many to choose from. So that's one way is the podcast. Second way is you can go to the website, moneyripples.com, and we've got lots of resources on there too, including that book that I learned from during that recession.
Yeah.
I actually created those tips that helped my clients free up now over 250 million in the last 11 years. I teach in that free ebook on the website, so you can check that out too.
Are you doing any live events?
I do, but now I keep it exclusive more for my own clients.
Good
and
job.
that's it. So I don't even do live events for people. It's pretty much, if they want to work with us, they have to apply.
Well, I want to thank you so much. And I want to invite you back in 3 to 6 months.
That'd be fun.
Because then I'm going to digest all your stuff and we're going to get deep.
Nice.
Well, as I said, thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, remember this. At the end of the day, you are a human being. You are a person of color, hue, no matter what you think you are, because we're under the sun. All of us have a color, otherwise we wouldn't be seen. You are the image of man, so we're told, and the issues come in the being part. What you really have to do is start with yourself. The one thing I always tell people, the most important thing is find your lane and stay in it, because your path is a unique path. It's when you start looking at other people's paths, your being starts to get out of sync. So stay in your lane, as they say when you're in the race. And remember this, if you don't feel love, you have to, like I said, start with yourself. And that starts in the bathroom, believe it or not the way you think. When you get out the shower, drop your towel, walk over to the mirror, look at the God body that you were given. The wrinkles, the moles, the jiggly parts, all that. That's you, and we cannot create that yet. And I want you to get close to the mirror. Look in your eye. There's a little thing that's called an iris that is like a nebulae in the sky. As above, so below. You are 1 in a billion, trillion, gazillion. Own that. But when you meet another person who has a nebulae in their eye, like the one in the sky, treat them with love, honor, and respect. Till next time, love you all. Peace.